think you just push the button there, moving a little bit closer, and then chat away, and then hopefully you can all hear me. And then when you don't want to talk, turn it off. All right, Beth, shall I put it here so it's next to you? You can zoom on the new Beth. Emily, have I missed any other housekeeping bits?
Just got a bit.
So Emily, sorry, are there any other bits housekeeping wise that I've missed?
I guess it's the same. Is it the same, Lucianne, in terms of part 2? If we've got essential.
If you have anything off, then you're going to part 2 and I'll stop the streaming.
Okay, so we'll do that as standard at the end. Okay, well, firstly, welcome everyone to our first face-to-face meeting in, gosh, I can't even remember the last time we all sort of got together, but it's really nice to actually be in a room together and actually see you, and we're not cardboard cutouts of ourselves at home on the computer. And thank you obviously for coming out this evening in this lovely summer's evening. First, I'm just going to welcome, we've got some new members who've joined us. So sort of going to go around the room. So Nigel, you're new to Sacre. You're very welcome. I don't know if you just want to introduce yourself to everyone and just let everyone know what group you're representing.
Right, so I'm Nigel Harman. I'm an elder at Wycliffe Baptist Church at Cemetery Junction in Reading. So that means I'm representing the Free Church.
Thank you, Nigel. You're very welcome. Just going around the room as well. And Adrian, you're new to us as well, so welcome.
Thank you for the welcome. Yeah, 21 years ago, my daughter was born, and my wife lost 10 pints of blood and had 9 units. And after that, we thought, why are we here? So we had a kind of a moment where we changed our outlook on life and went to church for 10 years, to a normal church, and then the last 10 years at a different kind of church. And then somebody said, oh, put your name forward as an elected official. Don't worry, you won't get elected. And I got elected.
Not everyone tells the truth.
You're very welcome, and we're pleased you could join us as well. I'm just thinking, is there anybody who joined us online, or if we all?
Sam?
Yes, Sam.
I joined online. Oh, hello.
Hi.
Oh. I joined online. Jackie Rance.
Okay, thank you. I can't see your name. Sorry, it's not on. Okay, Jackie. Okay, you're very welcome, Jackie, and hopefully we'll see you face to face at our next face to face meeting, which
yes, someday, I'm sure.
Next summer. We're sort of planning once a year, sort of face to face. We're very welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sacre. I'm just going to pass over to Catherine very quickly, just to give us some apologies.
Yes, we have apologies from Sukdev Bansal and
Nick Barnett.
Thank you. And we are quorate, so we do have members from every single group. So if we do have to make any decisions this evening, we are able to do so this evening. I hope you all had, just carrying on with our agenda, so item 2, the minutes. I hope you had an opportunity to read the minutes from the previous meeting. I thought they were very thorough. Could I just have somebody to propose that those minutes were a true and accurate record of our meeting on the 7th of March, please?
Seems like ancient history there.
It does, doesn't it? Thank you, Beth. And just somebody to second those minutes for me, please. Thank you, Philippa. I think what we'll do, as always, if it's okay with everybody, matters arising we'll take throughout this evening's meeting, as opposed to actually having it as a separate item. I just think it's a little bit easier and it makes the meeting flow a little bit easier. And if there is anything we have missed, then we can pick up towards the back end of the meeting.
Can I just say something? My apologies weren't noted at the last one because I'd actually gone off sick, so I couldn't have registered my apologies for the last meeting.
Catherine, can you make a note of that? We'll just make that slight amendment.
Yeah, I'd gone into hospital, so.
Okay. Well, I'm assuming you're better, Andrew.
Yes, I am.
Okay,
fine.
good.
Thank you.
Good. So I'm just going to hand over to Emily for item 4 for our summer term update. I always find this item very interesting, see how our schools are doing, especially as we sort of move to living alongside COVID.
Great, thanks, Stephen. So in terms of COVID infections, as a local authority, we're not collecting data from schools anymore. But what I understand is that things have been easier for schools with absences for pupils and staff recently. But unfortunately, we know that nationally infection rates are rising, and anecdotally, I have heard from several different schools that they have had some staff off recently or currently with COVID. So yeah, hopefully the rise isn't going to affect schools too much. I think schools are operating much more normally now. I think there is some practice that may have changed permanently as a result of the pandemic. So, for example, I think a lot of schools are planning to carry on having parents' meetings online because those have gone well. Maybe some schools are still having staggered break times and start times, and I think increased ventilation is continuing. But in terms of COVID restrictions, I think most, if not all, have probably been lifted. I know that extracurricular activities are happening again, trips and visits are happening again. Philip was just saying at the school next to his church, they've just started going back to whole school assemblies. So things are getting back to normal. Schools, I think, seem to be busier than ever, is my perception. The school staff here will probably comment on that. But I know that schools are working really hard to support children to recover from the pandemic in terms of their well-being and their social skills, as well as their academic achievement. And I think some of the impact of the pandemic does continue to be felt in schools, with the amount of face-to-face teaching time that children missed. And also, of course, there's been the impact of the pandemic on families financially, and of course now the cost of living increases, which are affecting families. So all of those things have an impact on children in schools. There have been various reports produced recently on looking at what has been the impact of the pandemic on schools. And things that seem to have been particularly impacted are young children's communication and language skills, children's personal, social and emotional development. Some head teachers have said to me that children are noticeably less mature than they would normally be. Children are showing increased levels of anxiety and less confidence and resilience. And of course, children have gaps in their knowledge and skills, although I know there's a lot of progress being made in closing those gaps. And I think in some cases, children have got back to where schools would normally expect them to be. So schools are providing a lot of extra support at the moment to help children to catch up and supporting their well-being. And in some cases, they're adapting the curriculum for all children in order to fill those gaps in their learning. There is government support being provided to schools in terms of extra funding, for example, to support children, and in terms of a national tutoring programme. But this isn't always easy to access. So the tutoring programme you may have heard on the national news, there's been complaints about a lot of bureaucracy around it, and also a lack of tutors being available, and the quality of the tutors not necessarily always being good. So many schools have decided to use their own staff for tutoring, which can work a lot better. But of course, that's another thing for school staff to have to do. We know that this summer statutory assessment is happening. So primary school testing is happening for the first time since the pandemic. We know that A-levels and GCSEs are happening currently in secondary schools. So school staff have been working really hard to prepare children for those tests and exams. A completely different thing that schools are having to deal with at the moment is new arrivals from other countries. So we know that in the southeast, Wokingham and Reading are the two most popular boroughs for Hong Kong families to settle in. So for the last 18 months, 2 years, we've had a lot of families coming to the borough from Hong Kong, and that is continuing. And of course, on top of that, more recently, we have families from Ukraine coming to the borough. So the latest data that I have is that over 100 households in Wokingham have volunteered to host Ukrainian families. And so far, 40 Ukrainian children have been placed in Wokingham schools, but we're expecting a lot more in the coming months. So there's quite a lot of pressure on school places in the borough, particularly in some year groups, and some head teachers are taking over their admission number in order to offer those children a school place. And schools are working together to come up with solutions for how can we find school places for all these extra children. And of course, when schools do admit these children, they've got to support their language needs and in many cases their well-being needs if they've come from Ukraine particularly. So in terms of our work with schools, we're finding in our team that we're getting quite a lot of teachers sending apologies for network meetings and training, because there's so much going on at the moment that teachers simply, although they want to get to everything, they simply aren't able to. And I think there's an awful lot of tiredness amongst staff from dealing with the impact of the pandemic. Schools are now welcoming visitors. Hi, Julie. So as a school improvement team, we are now visiting schools in person where we need to, but we're still meeting with teachers online where that can work perfectly well. In terms of our training and network meetings going forward, what some teachers seem to be saying to us, please carry on doing things online. Other teachers are saying, please, can we meet face to face? Some are saying we'd like a mixture. So it's really hard to know. I think in practice, it probably will be a mixture. So in conversation with Angela about our development plan going forward, we're thinking probably we'll offer schools a mixture of RE training and network meetings, mostly probably still online, but a few things face to face. And as you know, with our Sacre meetings, we're thinking of having our autumn and our spring meetings online and our summer meeting in person, at least for next year. So I think that's kind of what the future's probably going to look like in many ways for different kinds of meetings. So I don't know if school colleagues in the room would like to add anything or comment at all, because I'm aware you know far better than I do how things are in schools. Is there anything I've missed that you think people should know about?
Are there any questions for Emily before? Thank you for the update. I always find it really sort of helpful, and it definitely sounds like our colleagues in schools are very stretched at the moment. We're sort of getting back into the swing of things, and with, like you say, summer assessments as well. But it's always very useful to hear about the updates, and also really interesting to hear about all the families that are relocating to the local authority and how our schools, as we know they would, always go above and beyond for the young people in the local authority. It's really, really pleasing to hear. Thank you, Emily. Moving on to Emily and Angela, so item 5, the development plan.
Shall I do the budget update first, Angela, and then go on to the development plan? So maybe if I just share with you the relevant page from the agenda pack. Okay, so apologies for the small font. This document on page 13 of the pack is just an update on the end of the last financial year. So where you see the blue font, that is things we've spent money on since we had our Sacre meeting in March. And those of you that were at that meeting will know that we had a discussion about how to spend some additional money that we had left in the budget. And Angela and I put forward a proposal of offering our secondary schools a programme of training, which Sacre members said we should go ahead and do. So secondary schools have been offered one training session that took place live on Zoom, and then 3 recorded training sessions that they've been able to access whenever they like. And coming up this week, Angela and her colleague are offering a Q&A session where anyone who's been to any of those training sessions can come and ask questions about the training, about the topics. So we spent £1,800 on that. Which I think was really good value for money from Angela and her colleagues at RE today. And we also spent a bit of money on Angela's time. She submitted an invoice to us after our March meeting. So really pleasingly, that brought our end of year spending to a total of 9,409. Just make it a bit bigger so you can see that, and our budget allocation was 9,600. So we didn't quite spend our entire budget, but it was really close. So I think we spent our money really well last year. So if I go on to the next budget document, this is the draft budget plan for this current financial year, and it's got in it very much all the things that we usually have. But what I've really tried to do more than I ever have before, because I'm aware that we don't want to be in a position again this year where we have a surplus at the end, near the end of the year, which we suddenly have to think how to spend. So I've tried to be really forensic as much as I can in thinking, you know, really pinpointing exactly how much we're likely to spend on each thing in our budget plan. And what's made that easier is, of course, this year we know what's going to be online and what's going to be in person. So we know, for example, when we need to budget for travel costs for Angela, when we need to budget for refreshments for meetings and things like that. So hopefully I've got it more precise this year. So our budget allocation this year is, as usual, 6,800. We didn't carry forward any from last year like we did previously. And our budget plan, as things stand, adds up to a total of 6,670. So we've got 130 that we haven't budgeted for yet, which we could either decide to budget for, or we could leave it as contingency fundings, depending on what people want to do.
Emily, it's a budget, sorry, not budget, sorry, it's a syllabus review year next year.
Yes, thanks, Stephen. So as I understand it, the Hub has decided to defer reviewing the syllabus for a year. So we have contributed £900 to the Hub. They've invoiced us for that, and we've processed that invoice. And as I understand it, the Hub will be, we think at the moment, leading the syllabus review, which will start to be planned for in earnest towards the end of this financial year. Is that right, people that attend the Hub meetings?
I thought, and Angela, I mean, jump in and help me. So I thought we deferred it for a year, which is 22, 23, and then I assume the syllabus review would start taking place in 23 at some point. Do we think it's going to take place after the financial year?
That was my understanding of it.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
So we're going to
23-24.
So we'll request a slightly higher budget, 23-24 is what we're. I just don't want to be in a situation whereas where the hub goes. I don't know, maybe we've missed something we don't have money for to support that, because I do think we are, I've always said this to everyone around this table, that we are I think the driving force and the engine behind the hub. Woking was always very supportive of it. But I defer and trust your judgment, Angela. So we're okay this financial year. And then for April 23 to 24. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, and just to say, the very final budget document you've got doesn't have much information on it, but it's just telling you what we've spent so far this financial year, which is very little so far. So it only adds up to £281, but largely that's because Angela submits her invoices termly, so we haven't had the summer term invoice yet.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Emily around the budget?
Obviously, the budget plan, I should have said, very much links to the development plan for the year, which Angela's going to take you through. So you might have some suggestions after Angela's explained the development plan.
There also was an action for Beth and Emily to get together regarding looking at sort of budget and sort of spreadsheet and plans. I think Beth had this very small thing called the election in May, and Emily's been obviously very busy with schools, especially this term. I think with coming to the back end of the summer term, Emily, I could be wrong here, but I think hopefully you have a little bit more capacity, and Beth maybe a little bit more capacity, because you won't be pounding the pavements and yeah, elections and things. So if we defer that, Catherine, as an action for Beth, to get together at some point.
Yeah, and also to say, Stephen, there was an action around people sending me ideas for, there was a suggestion we'd have a kind of wish list if we did have any money remaining towards the end of the financial year. And I haven't received any ideas yet, but obviously I'm always open to hearing from people if there are any ideas.
Thank you. And as Emily said, if anybody does have anything they can think of in terms of like a wish list or things where we could spend money and support our colleagues across sort of primary and secondary phases, then obviously please do send to Emily. I've just had a thought just occurring to mind. Do we do anything for early years foundation stage?
We had a network meeting, didn't we, that with an early years focus last year?
Yeah, we did with Fiona Moss leading training. So that was very well received, and it could be something that we might focus on developing in the near future.
Thank you. Anything else on the budget, Emily? Okay. So is this bit over to Angela now for the...
Yeah.
This is your spotlight now, Angela. So this is going to be non-stop talking for the next hour.
Don't make me more nervous. Okay. With regard to the action plan for the financial year, I've put something together which Emily is projecting on the screen there. There's really, rather than talking you through every single point, I'll highlight the things that are a little bit different this year, and welcome questions or comments on the detail. So in terms of our core business, we meet regularly. It's rare that we're ever in quorum, and we have a really engaged membership on Sacre that do a lot over and above. The modification that we've made in discussion with one another, Emily and myself, is to rethink member visits to schools. It's been incredibly difficult for members to go into schools, and whilst that might be a prospect in the coming months, and that's absolutely fine if members do wish to engage with schools and perhaps go in and see what goes on in RE classrooms and in collective worship. That's absolutely fine, but we've kind of modified that requirement to encourage members really to participate at some of our events and networks, or come along as observers if they wish to. So we thought that is, a good way for members to be able to engage with teachers in classrooms, but in a slightly different and slightly less prescriptive way.
Emily and Angela, sorry, just item action 3 timescale. Just need to look at the dates on that.
Yeah, I just noticed that typo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Thanks,
need to get
Stephen.
the dates on there. Thank you. Yeah.
Definitely don't want to go back to 2020 and COVID.
Oh no,
lockdowns
no,
again.
we don't. No, we don't want to be going backwards. Apologies for that. So supporting teachers to continually improve RE in school. We have presented a lot of CPD for teachers. We've been really flexible. We've listened to what teachers have to say, surveyed teachers and found out what their needs are for their training. We're going to continue to do that in this financial year as well. We've slightly rejigged our plan for networks, and instead of having 3 primary networks and no secondary networks, we were developing secondary networks last year. We've decided that there are going to be 2 primary networks and 2 secondary networks, but a cross-phase network as well. We've found that it's been really beneficial for teachers in primary and secondary sectors to come together, think about issues around transition. There's been the conceptual understanding project, which has been immensely helpful to practitioners, and we want to continue with that engagement and that practice with teachers. In terms of the Pan Berkshire Hub, we have discussed some of the issues there already with relation to the syllabus review and the delay that I think is sensible, actually. We have listened to teachers. There's not an appetite for changing the syllabus at the moment, but there is, how shall I put it, we've picked up on that, on the fact that some teachers are not fully understanding what the syllabus is and the place of the syllabus within their teaching. And so there is a lot of new thinking that's going on with regards to RE that we need to consider when the syllabus review is in full swing. So there is a meeting planned for the Pan Berkshire Hub, which is just very recently been scheduled. I think it was last week or that we had the date for that, and that's going to be on the 14th of July online. So there'll be more news to follow. Just to say that the Real People, Real Faith project is still going ahead. And there are more films being made with different faith communities and also with humanists across Berkshire, and that's a really valuable resource that is having a lot of how can I say, attention from teachers, and it's sitting on the NatRe website as well, where it's really easy for them to access it. So that is something that is being developed above and beyond, really. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions or comments.
So even though I'm an RE teacher, I went on the Sacre. We talked about it in we going for the secondary school one. So I attended that with very little knowledge of secondary school RE, but I did find it really useful. So I would encourage some Sacre members to even if it's a silent person attending that meeting. It was so good to listen to my secondary colleagues, because again, I hadn't taught any of those things and I found it really valuable. So I would just say thank you. I thought it was really good, and actually that's a really lovely way, if you can't get into school, to be involved still.
That's really helpful feedback. Thank you so much. And I think Emily and I are very conscious of making sure that all of the opportunities are advertised to all teachers and to all Sacre members. So even if it's a primary network, secondary teachers can still go along to that, and lots of them do actually, don't they? So we try and make it as open as possible, and moving forward, we are actually advertising all of the dates for next year on one flyer, so that teachers can see everything that's available to them, and so that they can block out time in their diaries as well. So that will take priority. So hopefully that will work really well, because we've not been quite that organised before. So that should make a real difference to engagement, we're hoping.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, just, I can't remember if we said this in March. If I did, I apologise. Talking about the questionnaire and moving forward for the syllabus review, and the comment that came to me was about the Pan-Berkshire syllabus questions on the questionnaire. People felt weren't relevant because they used a certain scheme or like the discovery, and couldn't see the link because they never particularly look at the Pan-Berkshire syllabus. They just take the discovery and accept that as, so that I'm wondering if whether that might be something that could be married up kind of in network meetings somewhere, getting ready for the syllabus kind of review. Is it worth then building some of that into network meetings to look at how the Pan-Berkshire kind of underpins anything else that might be used?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And when the syllabus as it stands was implemented, that was before my time as advisor here. But I think we've talked about this in previous meetings. I think there was a lot of engagement at the time with launching the syllabus and making sure that teachers were aware what the syllabus was and how it fitted with discovery and how it should be used in the classroom. And I think, moving forward with the syllabus review, that's something we're going to really keep in mind to make sure that that teachers really do understand what the syllabus is. A lot of attention around launching it and support materials and so on, and feeding it into networks. So making sure that teachers fully understand it, I think, is a really good point.
Sam?
Just to help with that, I'm sure that both with the Oxford Diocese units and the Discovery units, when the last syllabus was launched, they produced link documents that showed where each of the things linked in together. So that's a resource that's available for people if, as you said, not quite sure, because I take that on board. I think actually that's quite true. Teachers take what's presented to them rather than thinking about what's behind it. But there are definitely documents that link those two, if that's any help.
And I think the subject leader training addresses that as well, and certainly moving forward, I'll make sure that will be the case.
Are there any other questions or comments on the development plan for Angela? I just have a couple. Regarding sort of membership, we are in Group B, a couple of members down, and the Church of England representatives. And then I know, saving that for the end. And then also Group A, as always, I think we're still looking for a Buddhist member to join us. If anybody does know any Buddhists or have any contacts, then please do. As Catherine said in one of our sort of previous meetings, I think that personal connection is always the best way. And then Group B, so we're a couple of members down within the Church of England group. So again, if anybody does know anybody, then please do share with Catherine. Philip.
Yeah, just on that, I have asked the area deans who sort of convene networks of local Church of England clergy to pass on about the vacancies to their networks. So that might yield something.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. The second thing as well, it just occurred to me that for some of our new members, you might not have been aware what I was talking about when I was talking about a syllabus review. Every 5 years, we have a statutory duty to come together as a Sacre and look at the locally agreed syllabus. So the previous one was put together in 2017, and in theory, 2022 is when we would review the syllabus and see and ask those questions: is it fit for purpose? What should we do? Look at the local area, and then make some decisions and put together a new syllabus. We are allowed to extend that, and that's what we have decided to do as a Sacre. We've decided to extend that period, given that we've had COVID, given it's been really challenging for our colleagues in school. It's been a very tough time for children and young people. So we made that decision to extend that. So with the view that 2023, after the budget, that's when we will look at the locally agreed syllabus. So summer 2023, is that correct, Angela? When we think we'll start beginning the very sort of embryonic stages of looking at the syllabus again, I guess with a view to having a new syllabus in 2024 that should last for 5 years, and then we'll review it again in 2029. So that's the syllabus review.
Could we explain how we do it? Because we don't do it on our own.
Do you, I'll pass over to you, Beth. You can be Mike Lady.
Thank you, Stephen. You've heard us talk about a hub, and a hub is all the Sacres in Berkshire, in the Berkshire authorities, and we work together on sharing costs, because it's not cheap to put a lot of hours into producing a syllabus. And so we meet termly as a hub, and either Stephen or I and Angela go to the meetings and meet with our colleagues on the other local authorities and decide what we can do for the money that we've got to get the best value out of it, and sharing the costs of a very expensive review. And Angela will tell you how many hours and hours and hours it takes. Seems to be the most reasonable thing to do, and it ensures some equity across our schools, because the schools in Reading, the schools in Bracknell and Newbury are all working to the same syllabus. We all share the same paperwork, we work from the same base series, and so that saved us over the years a lot of money. It means that Angela does a lot of the work for all of the hubs together, and we discuss the not the fine detail, but some of the detail in our hub meetings, and feed it back into the national organisation for what we're doing. So that's what the hub is.
And what I will just add to that as well is that Angela goes above and beyond and attends every single hub meeting, and definitely champions Wokingham. So we always appreciate everything you do at the hub, Angela. And the other thing I was just going to say as well, the cross-phase network meetings sound really good. It sounds like, I think it'd be really, really beneficial for both our primary and secondary colleagues. I think it's a really good idea. I look forward to hearing more about those. Before we move on, are there any other questions or comments around the development plan? No? Okay, thank you. So Angela, it's over to you again, just a bit of feedback on the teacher networks and the training that has been, and you've touched on it already a little bit.
Okay, so once again, teacher networks have been really positively received and quite well attended. We always have fewer secondary colleagues than sometimes we expect, but there are fewer secondary schools. So the primary subject leader training that went ahead on the 21st of March, and the feedback that we got from that, the only negative from the 13 participants was that one of them felt that she had been a little bit at sea until March and wanted would have felt that the training would have been more useful had it been in September. So we've thought about that, and next year we are presenting it on the 22nd of September. So that should help to allay that small criticism. The non-religious worldviews was delivered by my colleague Stephen Pett, and was attended by 7 participants, and that was very positively received as well. And I think Emily enjoyed going to that one too. We had a little chat about that. Primary network meeting. That went really well. I think there were a couple of secondary people there too participating in that. So we were looking at the autumn festival of RE CPD, and we were also making teachers aware that there were subject knowledge recordings coming up soon. We talked about the benefits of NATRE memberships. That's the National Association of Teachers of RE, that provide training and resources and so on. And the teachers were made fully aware that the Key Stage 3 training on subject knowledge is applicable and accessible to them, and hopefully they will have come along to those as well. So forthcoming training, we just mentioned the cross-phase networks. There's one next week that's going to be face-to-face. I can't remember which school.
St Crispin Secondary School. So if any members would like to come, then if you could let Catherine know. But yeah, it's 4 o'clock at St Crispin Secondary. It's next Wednesday, is it? 29th. That is Wednesday, I think.
I think so. Yeah. Look at my diary. Yeah. And There are still accessible Buddhism, Hinduism and Sikhism pre-recorded training sessions. And as Emily has already mentioned, there's the live Q&A with myself and my colleague Adam that's going to be taking place on the 23rd this week. So that's our training update.
So again, with that Q&A this week, it's on Zoom. So if any members would like the Zoom link, I think Catherine might have sent it out to everyone already, but yeah, a long time ago. So if you need it sent again, then let Catherine.
Thank you. Are there any questions around updates, sorry, the training and teacher network feedback? Would it be, well, I won't create more work for you, Angela, because I appreciate you're really busy, but after we sort of done this sort of big training cycle, which I think we'll finish with the Q&A, I think is that one of the last ones, maybe just have it, we have that as an agenda item, just as a bit of like a, just so we can evaluate it as a Sacre, like if you just give us sort of the good, the bad, and then what we could potentially do better next time, if that's all right, just from everything, if you pull that together.
Stephen, but this directly links to what you've just said. We did a school improvement team survey where we asked schools to answer lots of questions about all the different kinds of support we offered, and we included a question about support for RE teaching in terms of network meetings and training, and schools had the option of saying it exceeded expectations, it met expectations, or it was below expectations. Obviously, a lot of people that completed it wasn't applicable because they hadn't come to the meetings, but we had 22 respondents who had attended some form of RE support. Of those 22, 10 said it exceeded their expectations, 10 said it met their expectations, and 2 said below expectations. That's kind of typical in terms of, I think I said to Angela, I don't think we should take that too personally, because for all my areas, different areas of work, there were usually 1 or 2 people or a few more that said below. And unfortunately, they didn't give a comment, so we don't know why they said below. And it could be that the meetings were at a time that didn't suit them, for example, or, you know, they'd like them to be in person when they were online rather than the quality of the meeting. We have no idea why those 2 said below, but still it means 90% or a little bit more, if my maths is right, either we met or exceeded their expectations. So I think that's really positive.
Yeah, and I think that's, yeah, really, really positive. And Catherine, if you wouldn't mind maybe just minuting that, because that's quite useful for us to sort of, in terms of impact of what we've been doing, well, what Angela predominantly and her team have been doing, it's useful to see that impact. And I agree with what Emily's saying. I think we should be really proud that 90% of our sort of colleagues who did respond to that are saying it's very positive. Andrew?
I had the opportunity to attend one primary network meeting, and from there I gathered a lot of the teachers were really sort of, I think it met above their expectations on that one. They were really welcomed it. So it was good to see that.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? No? Okay, so if we move on to Emily's Sacre projects.
This is just a really quick one. Thanks, Stephen. I was just going to make sure everyone's seen the Sacre leaflet, which we've updated. I'll just see if I can share it on my screen for you. Catherine did send this out to you. Looks like it's not showing on my screen for some reason. Let's see if I can. Don't know if that's, yeah, it's not going to show. Just try one more time. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, you may have seen previous versions of this leaflet, but this is just something we have on our website. We send it out when people join the Sacre. We encourage teachers to have a look at it if they're not sure what a Sacre is. And it just explains very briefly what is a Sacre, what must a Sacre do. It has a list of all our members, which unfortunately goes out of date as soon as we've published it. So apologies to new people who Nigel, you're not included, I'm afraid. But we try to update it quite regularly, at least once a year. So you can see where we've got a couple of vacancies. Apologies, Adrian, we need to update you as well. And then it has that sort of generic information about Sacre, and then it has some information about what we do as a Wokingham Sacre. So there's some information about our syllabus, and I think it's got the web link there where people can find our syllabus. And it then has some information about how we support our schools to implement the syllabus. And I think it paints our Sacre in a really positive light, because when we come to write this summary, we realise all the things that we do. So we've mentioned the Crossing the Bridges project and all the resources that go with that, including the directory of speakers and places of worship. We've mentioned the Real People, Real Faith materials. We've mentioned the free resources and the training that we've provided to teachers. We've got lots of resources that teachers can access on the Schools Hub, particularly about places of worship. We've got our termly network meetings and our annual training. And then the actual support materials for the syllabus that were developed. And then a link to our annual reports where people can find more information. And then finally, on the back page, it has Catherine's contact details in case anyone has any queries or comments and wants to get in touch. So I just wanted to make sure you are aware that that piece of work has been recently completed. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Emily. Something that just occurred to Beth and myself as we were looking at is the Crossing the Bridges project, and actually COVID has probably had a bit of an impact on that, and I think we should maybe, Angela, Beth and myself, if we take to the hub to, I guess, almost relaunch it and revive it. Catherine.
There's a couple of things from that, actually. First of all, our school, Year 5, have just recently been to Slough Gurdwara, and actually Nirmal at the Gurdwara, I was kind of really pleased that he said, yes, you can come, but can you please submit a form from the Crossing the Bridges directory, please? And fill in your question and make sure that's all. So I filled out the whole form, and I was kind of delighted that actually it hasn't been forgotten. So that was really positive. And the other thing, I think we might have discussed this a couple of years ago, looking at the Sacre booklet, I think a comment came up that most faith groups either have an element or their symbol, and Christianity just has a building. I just remember that was a comment from a couple of years ago. I don't know what people think about that, but it's just something that I remember, that we looked at the cover and the back and whatever, and that was the comment that came out.
I think we could definitely take that on board, and I'm sure it's easy to sort of put in there so then all faiths have that kind of equity as well. But I can leave that with Emily and Emily's capable hands. That was really pleasing to hear about Crossing the Bridges, and that your colleague in the Gurdwara did ask for it. But I think it does possibly need another sort of a bit of a relaunch again, now that we're learning to live alongside COVID. So we'll take that to the hub, and we'll mention it at the hub.
The hub didn't do any work on it. Catherine did it all.
I know Catherine did it all.
Yeah.
Well, you spearheaded it though, but I just think it's the hub potentially could be the vehicle to sort of relaunch it. I know Anne Andrews has various contacts, and Angela has various sort of contacts, and then we can potentially get other Sacres to email schools just to say, this is here, we're living alongside COVID, and if places of worship will take people, then they can. Shira?
Press the button. Just one comment about Crossing the Bridges, because we work with a lot of schools, and although a lot of schools are able to do trips again and have visitors and all that, there are real budget constraints, and I've had so many schools tell us how glad they are that they can have a virtual visit to learn about a synagogue rather than having to, because the cost, the coach and everything, and it's just and also because and the time. So I think that in terms of Crossing Bridges, it'd be really good to see how many of the houses of worship in that could be set up to be able to offer a virtual service, frankly, for organization and financial reasons for the schools.
Thank you. I will make a note of that, and we'll share that with the hub as well, because I think it's a fair point as well. I think we've adapted our practice in many ways across lots of different sort of services and schools as well. And I think, we'll share that with the hub and see what they say as well. Okay, so we move on to We've done a lot of the hub updates, Angela. I don't know, to item 8, I don't know how much more within the hub you'd like to discuss, or
I don't think there's anything else to discuss. It's been pretty quiet of late, and we've discussed the syllabus review, and we do have this meeting coming up on the 14th. So I would say watch this space for more news about hub then, unless Stephen or Beth have anything to add.
I don't have anything to add. I think
I was just thinking it might be a good idea. A good idea to share with members about the films that we've made at the hub on the various faiths, and that they're available for members to watch. Can't remember where they are, but I'm sure they're somewhere easy to find.
they are hosted on is it RE Today's website?
Yeah. If you just Google Real People, Real Faith, NATRE, N-A-T-R-E, they're hosted and they're freely available. They're not behind a password wall or anything like that on the NATRE website. They look really professional as well. They're really nicely set out, and it's really easy to find your way through them. I don't know if we can send out a link to members. Could we just?
Yeah, we could send that out with the minutes, couldn't we, Catherine?
With the videos, what the hub decided was we would get together with members of different faith communities and then take the key questions from the locally agreed syllabus and then ask these representatives from different faith groups. And then, as Beth and Angela and Emily said, they've been used by a variety of different people, but sort of with an aim that teachers can use them within the classroom to help children and young people learn a little bit more about that particular faith group they may be studying. We can, Catherine can perhaps send a link out with the minutes so you can sort of look at it sort of during your own time. They are really good, and whilst I'd love to say let's watch them all now, we would be here for a very long time. So item 9 on the agenda is Worldview. So Angela, it's over to you.
So Emily is going to do the honours with some slides for me on this item. So really, the intention is for this item to just open up some thinking and discussion around the thinking that's been going on relating to moving from a big 6 world religions paradigm for RE towards a worldviews paradigm. So this thinking started with the Commission on RE reports back in 2018, which made lots of recommendations. And one of those recommendations was changing the name of religious education to religion and worldviews. That hasn't happened, and nothing from that report has become statutory, but it's been massively influential to thinking around RE. So my intention with this item really is just to introduce the members of Sacre to some of the thinking and discussion that's been going on around moving to this worldviews paradigm, and just open up some discussion, because it's going to be really influential to how we plan for our syllabus review and the future of RE in the UK, I would say, as well. So I've just put a slide up there, or Emily has kindly for me, just explaining one definition really, and it is contested, and there are different views around what a worldview actually is, but what the Commission said about what a worldview is. So they said that it's a person's way of understanding, experiencing, responding to the world, can be described as a philosophy of life or an approach to life. It includes how a person understands the nature of reality and their own place in the world. A person's worldview is likely to influence and be influenced by their beliefs, values, behaviours, experiences, identities and commitments. So it's not something that's just an opinion or a way of looking at a certain issue. A worldview is something that really is integral to how a person moves through the world, if you like. So I'd like to just show you a really short video clip. It's a really lovely animation, actually, that was produced for the Theos think tank. And I just really invite you to think about how this might have an influence and an impact on the future of RE in Wokingham and beyond as well.
I've just had a thought, Angela, that I need to make sure I've got my sound turned on. So hopefully, let's see if this is going to work.
What is your view of the world? How do you see things? What makes you who you are? On what do you base your decisions? Why did you react like that? Do you believe in God or a higher power? Or do you see the world as a cocktail of chance and accident? Everyone has a worldview, whether religious or not. Each individual sees the world through a certain lens. It may be shaped by your upbringing, surroundings, or religion, and it can change as you move through life. Worldview can be both personal and organised. It is your attitudes and deeply held beliefs. It shapes how you live. It is important to think about your own worldview. Where do you think truth lies? What about the worldviews of those around you? Do you understand them? They may not be as similar to yours as you expect. Or perhaps your worldviews will be more alike. Some people may feel that life is about success and improvement, being the best you can be. And some think it's about helping the most vulnerable in society. Others may believe belonging to a group is vital for finding meaning, while another treasures belonging to the earth in all its beauty. And still, most of us will not see the world through only one lens, but rather through a blend of multiple visions. In an increasingly pluralistic society, understanding the world around us means realizing that there is no neutral perspective. Nobody stands nowhere. Do you know where you stand? And why?
Okay, so as I say, that was commissioned by the Theos think tank, and it kind of encapsulates and sums up a lot of the thinking that went on during the commission on RE. So there is this recognition that we do live in a society that is no longer perhaps as religious as it once was. And Mark Chater, for example, in his book Reforming RE, if you can get a copy of it, it's a really interesting read, actually, written by lots of advisors and teachers and different authors. It's something that will really get you thinking about RE and its place and purpose. He says that that 70% of young people, maybe upwards of that, are not religious in a traditional way, at least. And so this idea of moving to a worldviews paradigm could actually be more inclusive. And I don't know, Stephen, you might have had this experience where you've had pupils in the secondary classroom who think that RE has got nothing to do with them because they don't believe in anything, but they do believe in lots of things. They just maybe don't realise that their beliefs are going to be open to scrutiny and challenge within the RE classroom. So there's a potential for RE to become more inclusive and more relevant, maybe in some of the lives of the young people that we teach. Although I don't completely buy that argument, because we teach pupils about things that have absolutely nothing to do with their lives that can still be really fascinating if we think about ancient history, for example, and things like icebergs and geography that pupils can engage with. They're not necessarily part and parcel of their day-to-day lives. So I've kind of made a sort of diagram, and I will share these slides with everybody if you want them after the meeting, just to kind of encapsulate a little bit further some of this thinking that's been going on about worldviews. So in a way, calling the subject religion and worldviews, it's a bit like calling a subject science and physics, because religions are worldviews and so on. And so there can be religious worldviews, there can be, you know, secular worldviews. There are worldviews that are personal and individual to people who are religious or non-religious, and also they can be institutionalized worldviews and organized worldviews as well. So that diagram there, I won't go through it in any detail, but it's just really to kind of highlight to members how you know, complex the thinking is, and it can be contested as well. There's no you know, there's no real consensus and 100% agreement about what worldviews paradigm should be or can be. So the next slide acknowledges that you know, worldviews they're messy. Often, you know, RE has been taught with, you know, religions in kind of silos, and this kind of approach, this worldviews paradigm, kind of calls upon us to recognise that kind of messiness of human experience and the complexity of belief and interchange between different religions and worldviews and ideas and ideologies and so on, and really to celebrate that, because, you know, this painting is messy, but it's beautiful in its own way as well, with all of these kind of interlocking colours but it's still a mess, isn't it? So so it's all about, you know, how we can think about the kind of complexity and the complexity of the worldviews that we find in front of us in the classroom, and how we can engage with that without you know, sacrificing, you know, religious literacy and you know, proper academic learning about religion and belief, you know, to a kind of worldviews paradigm. And I think that's something that we need to give a lot of thought to as we think about syllabus design. So so we cannot, oh, I didn't know it was all different bits on this slide, but if we just click through, so worldviews can be organised worldviews, that people can be really, you know, part and parcel of those worldviews. They can be on the outskirts, or they can stand outside of those organised worldviews and have their own kind of personal worldviews, and it's complex and it's different for lots and lots of people. So moving forward. So I've thought really about, you know, this idea of broadening the RE curriculum, and, you know, thought about this with teachers and with other advisors and colleagues at RE today. And, you know, it is a double-edged sword in lots of ways, and we have to be careful about how we go about putting into play a worldviews paradigm in RE. So, you know, we don't want there to be the loss of, you know, religious literacy. There are some threats there, and perhaps there's too much subjectivity. What do you include? What do you exclude? And so on. And these are the things that we need to kind of balance and, you know, walk a kind of tightrope to get it right. Because if we think about Ofsted, the mantra from Ofsted at the moment, the thing that we're hearing when we look at examination reports, inspection reports, the most frequent phrase that relates to RE is either that this school prepares, RE at this school prepares pupils really well for life in a multi-religious and multi-secular world, or this school doesn't do that. And thinking about how we can prepare pupils for this life in a world where worldviews are so complex, and where there's lots of different ways of being religious and lots of different ways of being non-religious, and where some people are religious and non-religious at different times in their lives, and even holds, you know, those views at the same time sometimes, is something that we need to kind of engage with. So I've just highlighted some of the literature that's kind of influenced this move and the shift in paradigm, if you like. And the most significant document that we're going to hopefully have some engagement with in the next meeting, first meeting of next academic year, is the draft document here, which is very recently published and looks at approaches around a national entitlement for RE that's been written for the REC with various partners. So the REC is the Religious Education Council for England and Wales, and it sets out a kind of national entitlement for students, or national statement of entitlement for all learners, and it really goes through the theory and the thinking behind it, and also then gives some practical steps and ways forward for those who are charged with curriculum design. So I'll just click again. Okay, so that's how it's kind of laid out, and my hope is that we will be able to have a look at that next meeting, if possible. So another way of interpreting worldview there, so describing the way in which a person encounters, interprets and understands and engages with the world. And I've just set out some of the pages just as a kind of a taster really to what that document is all about. So it's set out with 3 categories. So content, so what do the pupils learn? How do they engage with what they learn? So ways of knowing, which is huge with Ofsted and the research review into RE, and the position. So acknowledging that everybody comes to the study of anything, and certainly to the study of religion and worldviews, with their own positionality, their own way of looking at the world, which they can't take those spectacles off. They've got that way of looking at the world, and that changes as they go through life. So it's not intended to be a kind of list of requirements or so on. The idea is that there is a kind of model, a paradigm which is flexible and which helps curriculum designers to be able to engage with this idea of worldviews. And I've just put that up there for as a taster really, and we will hope to go into more depth into that as we move forward next year. So yeah, I think this is just highlighting what I've already said, and yeah, and over to the committee for their thoughts or questions.
Angie?
Are you hoping to somehow link this in? We've got the revising the syllabus in a year's time. Are you hoping to link this in with the revision of the syllabus?
It's not my hope to do anything with the syllabus as such. This is the current thinking that is happening around RE, and it will be up to the agreed syllabus conference to look at that current thinking and decide where to go with it. So it's really to impart the information to the committee this evening, and to to open it up to thoughts and discussions.
So the view would be that we look at this when we are revising the syllabus next year, to incorporate the whatever's been said in this document.
Yeah, that would be a I would think it would be an expectation that this is the current thinking in RE, and that ASCs and Sacres will be engaging with it.
Shira?
I have some misgivings here. Okay. The thing you said, religions or worldviews, I was like, no.
Okay.
Christianity is a worldview. I guess Islam may be considered to be a worldview. Judaism is not a worldview. It's a way of life, it's a culture, it's an identity, it's a history. Not sure Hinduism can necessarily be described as a worldview either. Hinduism quite similar in that respect.
It's a way of life.
It's exactly, Judaism and Hinduism quite similar. There are different paradigms. This is quite Christocentric, to be frank. There's a tendency for, unfortunately, people to try to describe other religions other than Christianity within a framework which works for Christianity. This is the problem with the new GCSE. Clive Norton complained about it, trying to put Judaism into all these, and you end up, it all becomes, I know this not all about belief, but it's focused on belief and also very much on individual attitudes as opposed to culture. And I have real misgivings about this. I don't see how Judaism fits in this. It just goes down. I always, get hackathon up when people get too focused on, describe Judaism. What do Jews believe? I'm like, well, that doesn't describe Judaism. If you were to say religion, culture, but it's just.
I think what
doesn't
you
work.
Yeah, I think what you've highlighted there is really important, and this is. I think what you've highlighted there some really important concerns, and as I've alluded to, and there's only a really short presentation here. The whole thinking around worldviews, it's not settled, it's not uncontested. And that thinking is still developing at the moment. So it's really important that the voices such as yours, and other people's voices are heard as this thinking develops.
I think I disagree with you a little bit, because I think that Hinduism is about a way of life, which is actually a worldview. I don't know, maybe I've misunderstood the worldview, but for me, Hinduism is a way of living which tells you it is about the worldview.
If the focus is on the individual, how the individual views the world, if that's the way that becomes the rubric in which we view everything, you're missing the everything else, and the practice, and it's very, very individual. That video was very, very about identity, about individual. And this is something which is a cultural trend. All the focus on how I view myself, as if somehow identity doesn't have to do with other people. And I know it's not 100% that, but this is the cultural trend, and it's something you have to guard against.
Okay, that's noted. And I think there is. A huge amount of thinking that is going on, and a recognition that there needs to be more engagement in the RE classroom with diversity within religions and within worldviews, as well as across religions and worldviews as well. So I've only given you a taster tonight, and I think this is why I think it's really important that we introduce the draft handbook, which has recently been published. My hope would be that we can distribute the link for this newly published document, and that people will engage with it and have a look at it before the next meeting, and bring their questions, their concerns, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, because these are exactly the sorts of things that we should be discussing as a committee. It's really important to the future of RE.
How much are the DFE and the government on board with this?
As far as I know, and as I say, nothing has become statutory, but the DFE were involved in the thinking around it.
I think Angela raised a really good point towards the end, which is what she was saying in terms of with the document that's been produced, actually is all going away, reading it, digesting it, because I think it is important. We are, I think, at a massive crossroads in terms of where RS is going. The plan for our children and young people across Woking, across Berkshire, and I think it's potentially quite an exciting opportunity, but I think it's really important that all voices and all faith groups are heard equally and appropriately, and we teach children and young people these different faiths appropriately. So I think, Shira, your comments around sort of Judaism and as understanding, I think, are very valid and very important. So I think we definitely welcome that, as Anne just said, and I think the comments have been sort of noted, and I look forward to more conversations around that. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments around that presentation around RS and worldviews? Was that
Yeah. Nick, I just wondered where that left the boundary between RE and PHSE, because obviously, engaging with the wider diversity of views or lack of them is really important. But I just wondered, at some point, does that teeter into there? And that's connected with the in the threats column was something about lack of focus, and certainly when we did the syllabus review last time, a lot of that conversation was around what what religions are being taught at which stage, and if I were an RE teacher, I might be a bit kind of at sea. So I think there needs to be a kind of really tight focus in the syllabus about what we're expecting them, what we're expecting to be taught at which stage, and how that borderline between teaching people about the range of views and helping them think through their own, I think that could be tricky.
I think those sort of comments are very helpful and sort of noted as well. I think in my experience, and I can only talk about my experience of one secondary Wokingham school that I led on PSHE and RS, and I was head of department, and we did have we had the young people for 4 hours a week, 3 hours were RS, 1 was PSHE, and there was a very clear division. So when we were looking at different, say for example, we were asking the young people to explore their own personal views, that very much would come under our RS umbrella, whereas the PSHE views would have been very much about themselves, I don't know, economics if you like, them having jobs, being healthy, all that kind of stuff. But I do hear you, I do think there is that kind of boundary that potentially could be blurred, and I think it's for us to explore and unpack a little bit further. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, so if we move on to item 10, national updates. Angela?
Okay, so I've included the updates in the pack. So I don't know if anybody has had a chance to read them and wants to ask any questions about specific items, I should say, on the updates. Otherwise, I can just give a brief summary of some of the main points.
I've read them. I don't know if anyone else has anything. I had a look. I found that if you haven't seen the report card on RS, the report card's interesting. I quite like the infograph as well. I think it's very helpful. But I'll hand over to you, Angela, to give us a quick summary.
Yeah, it is interesting. The report card, definitely do have a glance at it, because it gives a picture of RE over the last 5 years, with some good news and some concerning trends as well. I've also given some details about the draft handbook as well. It'd be really good if everyone could try and engage with that and come to committee with questions. It's interesting, going back to the report card, how there has been no money spent no government money spent on RE, whereas other subjects have enjoyed quite a lot of investment. However, it does seem that RS entries for GCSE full course have been on the up. So it seems that RE is recovering from lack of inclusion in the EBAC, but also there's a lot of work to be done in terms of resourcing specialist teachers for RE, and also for allocating a decent amount of time on the curriculum for RE as well. That said, these issues are being addressed in Ofsted reports. I have a colleague who is for NATRE looking at the inspection reports, and it is becoming clear that Ofsted are holding schools to account if there isn't equal time allocated for RE in relation to other humanities subjects, and looking at that kind of whole top-down view of the curriculum and what's on offer to who, spotting gaps in provision at key stages and so on and so forth. So that's really positive and encouraging. So there's a primary survey. I think that may have closed since publication, but if you are a primary teacher, click the link, and if it's still there to do, have a little go and have your voice heard there. We're going to be talking about Sacre, the NASCA evaluation tool, a little bit later. NASCA have got online training that's available now, and we are paid up members, and you will be getting lots of updates with regards to that training from Catherine. So if you do have the time, please do sign up. Some of their training is really good. Spirited Arts, those of you who are teaching, if you can just keep promoting and plugging the Spirited Arts competition. I've highlighted the themes in there for everybody. There's been a lot of lobbying going on.
Sorry, Angela, to interrupt. Just on the Spirited Arts, do you know if any Wokingham schools apply? Or oh, amazing. Would you mind maybe, and if we have this in action for the autumn term meeting, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the entries that your children and young people do, it would just be lovely just to see some of them and just to share. If you don't mind, don't want to create more work for you, but that'd be really great. Thank you.
That's great that we do have some schools participating in that. So there's been lots of lobbying at party conferences, NATRE and REC. New materials available for Key Stage 1, bite size, places of worship, examples of caring, which my colleague Lat has worked on. New resources for addressing anti-Semitism in schools as well. Bible offers for free. I'm just going through now to see what the main things are. The online training, the University of Edinburgh training on Buddhism is really valuable and free to access. Really handy if you're teaching Key Stage 3 to Key Stage 5 Buddhism. It's written and presented by academics, and it's really useful and nice to have for free as well. So please, have a look at that if you're teaching Buddhism. I think that's about it, and I think I've covered NASCA in item 11. I've included the slides from the conference, and if anybody has any questions around those, the conference took place on the 23rd of May. It was online. It was going to be face-to-face, but then at the last minute it was made online. It was really about how Sacres can be ambitious, what they can do to make sure that they are working in ways that gets great RE in front of pupils in schools and great collective worship as well. There was lots of talk about worldviews and in the breakout discussions, and also about how Sacres can overcome challenges such as funding for some Sacres and lack of personnel in some areas and so on. So it was a really valuable thing to attend. Recordings from the conference, I believe they've been made available, and if they have, we can distribute those to members. And certainly the breakout sessions that are happening during evenings, there's recordings and resources that go with those as well. So if you do have a chance to just log on and have a look at those, then they're well worth a look.
Thank you. Any questions or comments around the national updates or the conference? No? Okay, so if we move on to item 12, self-evaluation tool discussion. There was an action from the previous meeting that myself, Beth and Angela were due to meet to discuss, but again, I just think time perhaps maybe ran away with us. We will get together, the three of us, but Angela, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just really hard to know what to do about it, because NASCA have come up with a self-evaluation or self-assessment. They call it the variant names tool in order to really help Sacres to be really introspective and look at, you know, what they're doing well and what needs to be improved and what perhaps they could do with support with. So the idea is that there is an influx of information from Sacres going into NASACA to inform them, you know, what's going on on a national basis, I guess, across England. Emily and I have discussed this today, but in the pre-meeting, and we feel that there might be some benefit to us in engaging with this self-evaluation tool, but we also feel that it's a very long document and one that could, potentially be quite onerous in terms of what we can actually do as members and how much benefit it will actually bring to us as a Sacre. So it might be really useful for NASACA to see what's going on in our Sacre, but we have to think about, you know, what's useful and purposeful to us as a Sacre as well. So our concern would be around, how we were going to fit this into meetings. It's, a long document with lots and lots of questions, and we might all have different judgments about where we are on certain points. So Emily's just showing some of the document now. So, if we were to incorporate it as a standing item in meetings, it would take a lot of time to discuss. And if we were to rely on the goodwill of volunteers on committees to really, get the evidence to support where we are and so on, that's a big ask on people who are volunteers. And if it was done by myself, then that would be time that would be chargeable to Sacre as well. So it is something that maybe we do need to sit down together, Beth and Steve and Emily and I, and have a look at the bits that we feel might be really useful to us as a Sacre. Maybe identify a couple of points of strength and a couple of points of weakness, and break it down. Just look at the parts that are useful to us, and there's no statutory requirement that we engage with the whole thing, or we engage with it at all, but I think there could be some benefit. And of course, a lot of what's going into this report is actually on our development plan, and it does get reported on in our annual report as well. So I don't know how members feel about a way forward with this. And if I missed anything,
sorry, Angela. Sorry. Catherine.
Looking at it, I kind of think we've all signed up to this together. We've all agreed to be on this Sacre. Is there any benefit that actually we go away and individually have a browse through it and see what jumps out at us and feedback, rather than us doing nothing and sit back and let you guys do all the work? Actually, what do we feel about it to put into the pot for you to go, well, that's interesting, that's a common that's coming out from a lot of people? Because I just think it's not about just, you kind of doing that, we come and sit here, we kind of all invested in this together.
I would definitely be open to sort of that suggestion if everyone else would be. I mean, it would save all of us a lot of time, but equally, I think dividing and conquering some of the document. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts, but I think sort of based on Catherine's suggestion, I was going to suggest that perhaps maybe we do take it away, have a little look at it, have a little read, get sort of ideas to Catherine, and then from feedback from everyone, Angela, Emily, Beth, Catherine and myself can perhaps maybe get together from everybody's feedback, put it together into a document. Maybe not this big document here, it could be a slightly slimmed down version. But I think when I've done CEFs and development plan, it is useful, and it is a useful tool to celebrate successes and what we have done well as a Sacre, and we have done an awful lot these last few years, and equally just to maybe go, this is where we need to be better. It's a thought. I don't know if anybody has any other ideas.
Yeah, I'd like to make a suggestion, actually. I mean, this is all about best practice, and normally, in my experience, and my experience on the health committee here, is that, if you get external bodies that are doing the same job, communicating with each other. So in this context, it would be another Sacre group, and communicate with them before you go into huge voluminous documentation. Just have a checkpoint, a cross-check, and say, what's your view on best practice? What's our view on best practice? What can we share? Is there anything that we can collectively gain from each other?
I think, and Angela sort of jump in, once we've completed parts of this, then maybe Angela will be able to share with the other Sacres across when they have like conference meetings and say, this is what worked well, this is what hasn't worked well. I totally take Angela's points. At the end of the day, everybody has volunteers, you're all very busy and busy lives. But again, I think Catherine does raise a point that we've all obviously signed up and agreed to sort of support and help with this sort of what we do here. My suggestion would be, if you can have a look at it and send ideas to Catherine, please do. If you're busy, and like I said, everybody's got very busy lives, we understand and we appreciate that, and that's totally fine. There's no expectation. Please don't put yourself under pressure. But if you can have a look at it and you have things that you'd like to share with us, then please do. And then Angela, Emily, Beth, myself, and equally anyone else who wants to join in, we can get together and we can do something virtually, maybe. I don't know how that sounds, Angela, as a plan.
That sounds like a good plan. I think maybe if we set a deadline for people to respond, and then if we could meet the four of us after that deadline and review what's been said, that might be an idea. Another idea might be to maybe mention this at the hub meeting and see how other Sacres across Berkshire are engaging with this and get some ideas from them as well, maybe.
It's a good idea. We can do that at the hub meeting. Could I suggest maybe then feedback by the end of October? Because then what we can do is we can talk about it and have a conversation in the November meeting as a whole group, and then like a smaller group of us can get together and start putting things together. So that gives everyone a good few months. And Catherine, if you wouldn't mind popping that in as sort of an action, that
I'll send out.
and if people do have capacity, then please do. And like I said, if you don't, please don't feel any pressure, because we understand that everyone has busy lives and lots going on. Any other questions or comments around the self-evaluation tool? Okay, so the final item.
Could I make just one comment? And that I'm very aware that this is Philip's last meeting, and it would be quite nice for him to, when he's on his way out, to leave us an informal review about how good or not he thinks we are and what he thinks we can do to improve, because it's a long way up to Wakefield and we're not going to go up there just to get him back.
I don't know what the fee for an external consultant is. Yes, of course.
It's not much in the Methodist Church.
Thank you. So final item, any other business? I'll just go around the room. I've got one small bit. So
No.
No, my AOB is just as Beth has said, this is Philip's last meeting. We're really sad to see Philip go. We've really appreciated your calm personality at all of our meetings. It's we'll be sad to see you go, and our loss, but Wakefield's gain. But no, we really appreciate everything you've done these last few years in Sacre. So thank you, and yeah, you'll be missed. Thanks, Luciana. You can yep. I've just got one other small thing, which part 2, confidential. Million views on YouTube, everybody.